Introduction. As I sit down for the first time to write this book, our world is in a state of great confusion. There are wars happening all over the globe, fueled by the fear of the unknown. There are natural disasters occurring across the planet at what appear to be an increasing rate, compounding our fear of the unknown. We worry about earthquakes and tsunamis, tornadoes and hurricanes, psychos on a suicide mission, and terrorists with a religious mission. We fear people that look different than us, people that act different than us, people who believe different things than we do, and people with more power than we have. All of this fear is largely unrecognized and simply thought of as the way things are, as if this is the natural order of the universe. The belief that we must suffer during our lives here because life is tough or that's the way it is, has become the pervasive color of our world. I understand how this sort of thing happens, as does everyone else that has ever contemplated the subject. Perhaps it's the reason we as a species turn to religion in such large numbers. When times are hard, it's easiest to take comfort in the idea that this is all God's plan. There is far too much going on in the universe to understand God's intention, so we simply have faith in God's guidance and continue on with the story of our lives. So, where do we go to seek the comfort and wisdom of God? There are many options to choose from many different faiths and denominations. Glancing at only a couple websites online, I found 125 different types of Christianity and 84 different types of Islam. As you can imagine, it may be difficult to figure out who's telling the truth when you have 269 different versions of it to choose from. Can you tell me who's got it right? Have you ever wondered why the stories in those sacred texts don't seem to make any logical sense? If so, then you're certainly not alone. So that's the way it is, I guess. No one knows what's real and what's not. No one knows how to end world hunger, war, famine, disease. The only thing we can do is continue with our current trajectory, turning the planet into a wasteland, and hope that something survives when our planet becomes uninhabitable for the human species. We should go to church and continue praying to a higher power, waiting for the return of our Savior. It's been written, they say, the prophecies are coming true. You can see it everywhere. What if I told you that all the stories in your religious texts are true? And I can prove it. What if I told you all the stories in the religious texts are lies? And I can prove it. What if I told you both of those statements are correct? Answering these questions and providing some clarity of the confusion is the intention of this book. Chapter 1. The story begins. My name is Brad Vining. I was born and raised in a small suburban town in Michigan. My family lived in a quaint little neighborhood at the end of a cul-de-sac. My father worked in the auto industry, making molds for plastic injection car parts. He was like most American dads in the 80s with a love of sports and the outdoors. We spent many magical nights sleeping in the forests, hunting, fishing, and camping. Countless days spent on different lakes catching largemouth bass. He loved his family and always put us before everything else. My mother was a homemaker and a bit of a tinkerer. She would make different types of crafts and trinkets and sell them at craft shows. She was a pretty resourceful woman. She was a dog breeder, a Tupperware sales rep, Avon lady, and I'm sure several other things. My two older brothers and I spent a lot of time in the fields behind our house growing up. Behind our house was an unused chunk of land that we could access by hopping over a 3-foot-tall concrete block wall. It was a magical little place we could make forts, climb the trees and eat berries for hours, or cut through to save a few minutes on our walk home. We had a perfect little life, perfect little house, and a perfect little family. When I was 11, my mom was getting out of the car in the parking lot of a pet store. It was December or January in Michigan, which means pretty much everything was covered in ice. As she stepped out of the car, her foot slipped on the ice and she fell hard straight on her back. She ended up with quite a few medical issues and neck pain after several unsuccessful surgeries. It wasn't long before she had a gallon-sized Ziploc bag full of prescription pain medication. After about a year and a few thousand prescription opioids, my parents' marriage fell apart. I wasn't quite sure how to process that. On one hand, I was happy because it meant I wouldn't have to listen to them scream at each other anymore. On the other hand, I was confused by what happened. It wasn't long ago everything was perfect. Then, my mom falls down in a parking lot and things completely disintegrated in front of my eyes. For the most part, my life growing up was pretty standard for a blonde-haired Caucasian athlete. I excelled at every sport I tried to play, and I loved being the stud of the team. It was fun to be the center of attention, to be the one everyone was watching. Subsequently, I was quickly turned off by the idea when I realized something. No matter how hard I worked, or how good I get, it would never be enough to please the coaches. Every time I did something I considered to be great, I was only met with more expectation. At the surface, this seems normal, but all that did to me was cause confusion and anger. So, at the confident young age of 13, I decided I didn't need that kind of stress in my life and quickly found a different path. I've always had an incredibly difficult time when I witnessed someone being mistreated. I got in my first fist fight when I was in 3rd grade because someone was picking on my friend Andy on the playground before school. From then on, I sort of seen myself as the protector of people that needed protecting. Unfortunately, when I quit sports at 13, I took it upon myself to right all the wrongs I seen around me. Everyone in sight was now under my watchful eye, being surveilled for signs of distress or signs of abuse of power. When I was 17, I decided I wanted more from my life than just sitting around partying every day. I was surrounded by junkies, drug dealers, drug addicts, gangsters, wannabe gangsters, and all-around losers. It was clear to me what my future looked like if I continued down that path, so I enrolled myself in an alternative education type of school where I attended during the day and took night classes for 2 years in order to graduate on time. I did it, I thought to myself as I walked across the stage to receive my diploma. I was now an adult. Hell yes. The first Monday after I graduated high school, I had to be at work at 8 a.m. When I woke up that morning, I had an overwhelming realization. I thought, this is it? After all the work I did, now I have to stand in a building for the rest of my life and trade my time for a small amount of money? I've been confused about that thought ever since, and I've spent more energy I can describe fighting the idea. There has to be more to life than going to work and feeling like a slave all day. I quit that job about a week later and figured I would give building houses a try. Building things has always been incredibly easy for me. I've always had the kind of imagination that can look at anything as it sits and know exactly how it works. With one look, I can see an object as it sits, while simultaneously disassembling it, expanding the frame, and spinning it around in my imagination to see how it's all put together. I guess I was born with a gift of some sort of multi-dimensional thinking, like I can see an object in all its states, all at the same time, all laid out on top of each other. It's not something I understood completely, but it caused me to notice things that most people missed. I joined the United States Marine Corps in January of 2001. When you join the military, they require you to take a test called the ASVAB, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. I had no idea they'd want me to take a test, I just wanted to go and shoot people. So I took the test and they told me I scored a 97, with the highest possible score being 99. The score needed to get in the Marine Corps is 31. So the recruiter says to me, "What job would you like?" as he hands me a pamphlet filled with the different military occupational specialties to choose from. He said, "You scored high enough to do any job you want." I was incredibly confused by this. "What do you mean? This is the Marine Corps, right? I wanted to be a soldier." The guy on the front line. "Oh, you mean infantry," the recruiter said. "We can definitely sign you up for that. When would you like to go to boot camp?" And that was it. Off I went 2 weeks later to stand on the yellow footprints at MCRD San Diego. Things were moving by rather smoothly for a while. I trained to kill other human beings for 2 years before my body started to crumble under its own weight. I received an honorable discharge and was lucky enough to not have to go to war in Iraq and Afghanistan with all my friends. I moved back to Michigan with my pregnant wife and first son. For a couple years, I went from job to job, ending up with a job building schools all over the Midwest. I worked there for 3 years and seen a lot of people come and go. A lot of middle-aged men carrying stacks of lumber across the job site because this was the only job they could find or were qualified for. I was making $13 an hour, and I was getting $20 per diem spending cash because we were working out of town and living in hotel rooms. I was happy, comfortable, and on top of the world. I had it all figured out. Until one faithful day, the world shook beneath my feet. One of the foremen on the job sites was high on cocaine while driving a large piece of construction equipment called a SkyTrack. It's like a giant forklift with a 40-foot extension for lifting things into high places. I was standing on the roof of the building when this guy hit one of the roof trusses with the SkyTrack. The roof collapsed under my feet and I fell 45 feet to the ground, along with 5 or 6 other people. It was the longest half second of my life. When I hit the ground, everything was silent, and a cloud of dust filled the air. Then, I heard the screams of my best friend at the time, and foreman. He was on the other side of the building, fell 25 feet. Then, the top 12 feet of a 25-foot cinder block wall came down on top of him. Heber was his name. He survived the fall, and doctors put metal parts in his body to make him whole again, but he was in bad shape for quite a while. The whole incident was incredibly difficult for me to understand. I was flying high, loving my job, loving life. Then, I'm slammed with an overwhelming realization that this was all wrong. Why am I doing this? I spend 5 nights a week in a hotel room on the other side of the state while my family is living their lives without me. A couple months later, I set fire to my career with that company and moved on with my life. In 2007, I took advantage of the benefits granted to veterans and started using the GI Bill to pay for a college education. I was hooked. I had no idea how much information there is to know. I took my first computer programming class, and it was like I finally found my home. I could see how it all came together. Every line of code, every logic statement and loop sequence. It all made sense to me at a glance and didn't require much attention. I learned as much as I could about every inch of the computer. I studied networking, programming, 3D animation, image manipulation. It was as if I had a little magic box. I would enter the magic spell and my creation would appear right in front of me. I never ended up with the bachelor's degree, but I certainly learned a lot before the GI Bill benefits ran out. For the next few years, I again bounced from job to job, then moved to California in 2010. Throughout the experiences of my entire life, I have always had the ability to look at something and just know how it works. Whether it was building houses or computers, I could see how the parts fit together perfectly. One day, a guy I worked with didn't show up for work. His wife said he had a psychotic break and he was going to be in the hospital for a little while until he was better. As you can probably imagine, I was more than taken back by the idea that someone can have what they believe to be a real experience, while others standing in the same room are having a completely different experience. How is it that one person can hear things which are as real to him as anything you or I hear, but no one else can hear them? The worst part about this idea was that it's been happening to me my entire life. I wasn't hearing voices or anything like that, but I was clearly seeing things in a far different way than everyone around me. It was like no one could see anything that was happening right in front of them. No one could see how what they were doing was affecting everyone around them. Now that I think of it, the anger I felt and all the violence I've been involved in was because of my inability to verbalize what I was seeing. Not understanding why I was so compelled to right the wrongs of someone else, I would instead try to beat my opinions into people's heads. Literally. The more I thought about it, the more it drove me to dig deeper. What I set out to do was to understand what's happening inside someone's head during a break from reality, so I can help heal someone whom I knew wasn't crazy. I had been working with him for a while, and I knew with every fiber of my being that he simply can't verbalize what's happening because he doesn't understand it. So I would help him with that. I'll fix that, has always been my attitude. It didn't matter to me what the doctors thought about his condition. They clearly took their focus of treatment down the wrong path, so I was on a mission to create a new one. My friend never came back to work after that, and soon I stopped trying to figure out what I was missing. I moved on with my life as if it never happened. About a year later, things started to return to a sense of normal for me, which was back to being angry at the world and not giving a shit about other people's problems. I was a service manager of a medium-sized apartment complex, overseeing the maintenance of just under 300 apartments. It was the most money I had ever been paid, $27 an hour with full benefits. The only problem was, when someone clogged their toilet, it was somehow my fault. Don't get me wrong, a lot of the residents were very nice people, but every apartment complex has at least a handful of assholes. People who are so consumed by their own ego, they are under the impression the world revolves around them. After a while, I just couldn't take it anymore. I could feel these people as soon as they walked in the building. I could see their sense of entitlement before I even turned around to look at them. I had finally had enough. I quit my job, started a business in my garage selling power tool batteries online, and locked myself away from the world. I was tired of the pettiness of the office environment, tired of the stress of other people's problems drawing me in to feel just as shitty as they do. I was tired of hearing people complain about everything in their lives. Now it was 2014, and I was starting to learn some interesting information about neuroscience and started to really dig into this nonsense I kept hearing referred to as mental illness. I was working from home, on my own hours, and didn't have to hear anyone else's opinion. It was time to go to work. I started researching everything I could get my hands on. I was on a mission to see what no one else was seeing, to see the patterns that everyone else had missed. There must be an explanation to what was happening here. While listening to the Joe Rogan Experience on YouTube, I heard him talking about a company he was involved with called Onnit. They sell herbal supplements to help with memory, stress, endurance, immune system boosters, and a huge variety of other products for optimizing your performance. They had a product called Alpha Brain that they were selling as a powdered drink mix and was supposed to help improve memory and focus. I had been listening to Mr. Rogan's podcast for quite a while and I trusted his opinion. If he said it was good shit, it was good shit, so I ordered a box. When the order was delivered, there were a few stickers included. One of them said the words Total Human Optimization. Now that's a slogan right there. I placed that sticker on my laptop screen and I see it every day when I turn on my computer. Total Human Optimization became the order of the day for me. The focus of all my attention. I made a decision to push myself into optimizing my brain more and more each day. I actually said out loud, I'm going to have the most effective brain on the planet. I'm going to understand what no one else on earth seems to understand. I wasn't sure why the words came out in the way they did, but it felt right and it made sense. So, I held on to the idea. The information I found was so far beyond what I was looking for, I didn't understand what I was even looking at. At times I spent 20 hours a day, 7 days a week on acquiring more information for the puzzle, collecting variables and comparing data, listening to one perspective after another, comparing every word and every idea, overlapping every thought I had with every other thought simultaneously in an attempt to figure out where the patterns were. What I came up with was a massive collection of information, which I will attempt to present in this book in a way that can be followed by the reader. The information you will find is to be read as one idea. There are many pieces to the whole, but you cannot see the whole picture if you separate the thoughts. They must be overlaid on top of each other as you would imagine a multi-dimensional reality would be. Everything you read here will be laid out in a way that's easy to understand. Everything in these pages are common knowledge among our species. I didn't make any of this up, or use any sort of woo-woo, half-baked science. Everything in these pages is pulled from our collective consciousness and all the information being spread throughout the internet, our libraries, religious texts, and ancient sculptures. Any statements made are simply an observation of the reality I find myself in. I realize the confusion across the world is because most people aren't aware of what's really happening around them. We walk around reacting to our environment, scared someone will come kill us and take our stuff. There's a saying I heard once that stuck with me. I don't know who it was who first discovered water, but I guarantee it wasn't a fish. This book is an attempt to show you how to guide yourself through your life. The information found here will lift the veil to all the lies around us if you're willing to see them. You'll be able to see for yourself and know what to do. There is no longer a need to look outside for guidance. If you can think of yourself as a fish, you can consider the information collected here to be a description of the water we're in. Through understanding how the water functions, you'll understand how to swim within it. Why was this book created? Why was this book created? This book is designed as a guide for anyone interested in evolving their consciousness to a higher level. This book is designed to help people understand a way to manage the problems in their everyday life. This book is designed to remove the confusion and anger from our planet. This book is designed to end suffering on every level of human consciousness. This book is designed to describe the way our collective reality operates and how it interacts with our lives. In doing so, therefore rendering every religion on earth obsolete. This book is designed to exist forever in time in the Akashic record of our species, so anyone on earth can access the ideas formulated here from anywhere and any when in our time-space reality. There are a lot of reasons this book was created, but the main reason is really quite simple. This book is designed because it's time for the world to understand what's happening. The majority of people on earth are waiting for a savior to come in and right all the wrongs, waiting for the resurrection of Christ to usher in the kingdom of heaven. This is, unfortunately, a story we've been told by the people who believe they own the earth. A story told to us to keep us in a state of limbo to keep our attention focused outward. Our consciousness and our reality has been affected by the spreading of fear and lies for thousands of years. It's now time to remove fear from your consciousness in all of its forms. To do so, you're going to need to grasp a few concepts that govern our perception of what's real and what is not. You need to re-examine what you think you are and embrace what's truly possible in our world. Unfortunately, this type of information is quite similar to the existence of Neo in the Matrix meeting Morpheus for the first time. The only thing I offer here is the truth, nothing more. Before proceeding to read this book, I feel obligated to give you a piece of advice. You cannot unlearn what you will learn here. If you are in an exploration of your consciousness and ready to evolve yourself, please continue reading this book in its entirety and follow the advice in its pages. However, if the idea of discovering your ego scares you, or you simply aren't ready for the truth, then perhaps you should close this book, take the blue pill, and go back to sleep. Maybe you'll be ready in your next life. What you will find within this book. What you will find here is the truth without distortion about the reality we inhibit and the evolution of our consciousness. This book is written with the intention of freeing the entirety of the human race from the bondage of oppression which it has mistakenly brought upon itself. A mistake that has taken many millennia to bring back to a point of realization. This very same mistake is the basis of every religion, every conspiracy and conspiracy theory, every kingdom, and every monarchy. This is a mistake which can and will no longer go unrecognized. It will no longer be part of our collective reality. This mistake was made as a collective to place the power in the hands of the few to relieve the fear of the many. Many thousands of years ago, we gave our power away when we began to look outward for protection and guidance in the world of fear. We were told to put our faith in God, as we do what the priests and the holy men tell us what will prove our faith. Then we sit back in fear, waiting for someone to come save us from our troubles. This book was created to provide you with the information needed, so not only will you understand how the universe functions and the true nature of reality, but you will know it's the truth, and there will be no need to defend your perception any further. Through doing the exercises in this book, you will have all you need to search within yourself to find the place of knowing, a place of absolute certainty of who and what you are, a divine being and a powerful creator in a universe constructed of ideas. Chapter 2. Consciousness. What is consciousness? For as long as humans have been on this planet, they've tried to understand the meaning of life. Why are we here? How did we get here? Where did we come from? In modern society, we can get the answers to these questions from many sources. Every religion has answers for you, all prepared in books full of things you're not allowed to do during your lifetime as a human being. Depending on your religion, the final destination of your soul is dependent on the way you behave while living your human life. You may go to paradise of some sort, or you may go to a world full of fire and punishment, forcing the world to fear an eternity of damnation and torture if we misbehave. Depending on who you ask, you are assured to find a different answer. Some answers will be similar to others. Some will be downright absurd, leaving you with warm, fuzzy feelings all over. The truth is, there is no way to know which version is truth, which version is real. The truth is, the only way to differentiate between what's real and what's fiction is to know it for yourself through personal experience. Even when we are told not to touch the hot stove because we'll get burned, there is an overwhelming desire to see how hot it is, to touch the stove and experience its level of hotness. As you will see described in the detail throughout this book, and the teachings held within it, the universe you inhabit is dictated by the lens of perception you develop throughout your life. Everything you experience as reality is simply your minute definition of what is. For each individual, the what is or reality is different. Every human has a different perspective, a different opinion, and different emotions about everything they perceive. If I am having one of those days where nothing seems to be going right, while your day has been full of pleasant surprises, the way each of us perceive a simple photograph will be different. You will see nature's scene full of things that make you smile, while I will see dead grass, polluted atmosphere, and a looming destruction of our planet. If I then notice that you are seeing beauty, and I make an attempt to see what you see, I can look at the same picture again and see the beauty of nature and the power of Earth. The same image holds both the light and the dark perspective, the decay as well as the rebirth, so to speak. The only requirement to see one or the other is a shift in perception. So, what is consciousness? According to Webster, it's defined as noun. 1. The state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. She failed to regain consciousness and died 2 days later. 2. The awareness or perception of something by a person. Plural noun. Consciousnesses. Her acute consciousness of Mike's presence. 3. the fact of awareness by the mind of itself and the world. Consciousnesses emerge from the operations of the brain. Being conscious is defined above in the definition number 1. Being conscious is a state of being awake. When talking about consciousness, I am not simply referring to the fact that you are awake. I'm referring to the enigma of energy that you consider to be you. Some call it your soul, others call it your spirit, others don't even believe it exists. Like everything we are experiencing is a result of complete randomness in a universe full of chaos. In reality, nothing could be further from the truth. To illustrate what I'm saying, ask yourself, where does my consciousness or my soul originate? Some say it's a phenomenon caused by the electrical patterns in the brain. Others say it comes from the heart. So that means your consciousness is inside your body, correct? Let me offer you another perspective. Instead of your consciousness being inside your body, do you think maybe your body could be inside your consciousness? Could it be possible that everything you perceive as you actually extends beyond your body? Could it be possible that your consciousness encapsulates your body and not the other way around? Whether or not you believe it is unfortunately not relevant for your reality to continue on its current trajectory. Its current trajectory being the evolution of your consciousness. What I mean is, it doesn't matter if you think these words are false or true. This is the nature of all consciousness and the nature of the universe we experience as reality. If you'd like to understand why you are where you are in your current life situation, and why things happen in your life the way they do, you're in the right place. The 5 laws of the universe. Depending on who you ask, there are many laws that govern the many things in our lives. We have laws of physics like gravity, which keeps our feet on the ground. We have laws to keep traffic flowing smoothly while driving in our cars. There are laws of government, laws of science, laws of religion, and laws of the universe. Mankind has developed laws for pretty much everything we can think of. Laws to help us, and other laws to hurt us. Most of the laws we think of when we ponder the law of nature are things which scientists have been able to describe for us through mathematics. Things like gravity or climate change are very easily demonstrated in the language of science. The laws of the universe, as described by many great minds throughout time, are based in more of an esoteric realm, a place where it's not easily described with mathematics, but its logical basis and subsequent conclusions are in line with every scientific law known to exist. Law 1. You exist. You are here. Yes, you are. And lucky for you, you'll never not be here. You are a system of energy in itself, while existing as part of the whole, which means that as long as the universe is here, you will be too. That may seem a little too easily explained, so let me elaborate. The science. Webster's definition of conservation of energy, a principle in physics. The total energy of an isolated system remains constant irrespective of whatever internal changes may take place, with energy disappearing in one form, reappearing in another. Merriam-Webster definition of conservation of energy. According to the accepted definition, energy is not able to be created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred from one form to another. Remember that statement forever. The religion. According to Christianity, after you die, you'll end up in one of 2 places. The good guys go to heaven, and the bad guys go to hell, meaning when you die, your soul lives on past its body. According to Islam, after you die, you'll be met with a similar situation. You get a choice between a land of peace and comfort, or a land of eternal punishment, meaning when you die, your soul lives on past its body. According to Hinduism and Buddhism, after death, your spirit is reborn many times, and death is considered to be a natural event, meaning when you die, your soul lives on past its body. According to Catholicism, the soul is immortal and will be reunited with the body upon the final resurrection of Jesus Christ, meaning when you die, your soul lives on past its body. According to agnosticism, the possibility exists of an afterlife, but there doesn't seem to be a way of agreeing what it's like, and they're okay with that, meaning when you die, maybe your soul lives on past its body, and maybe not. According to atheism, there is no spirit or soul. You die. Your body rots. All energy is returned to the earth when the critters eat your corpse or when they set your body on fire, releasing all your precious carbon into the atmosphere. According to every major faith or religion, including the religion of science, there is no destroying energy. There is no other state of the existence of energy to be in. Energy exists and has no state of non-existence. I heard an old lecture by Alan Watts where he said, "We have all thought about what it would be like to go to sleep and never wake up. Now imagine what it's like to wake up after never going to sleep." So my point is this: you are here. You exist. You always have always existed. You will always exist. Law 2. Now is all there is. In a letter to a family of a friend who recently passed away, Albert Einstein was quoted as saying, "He has departed from this strange world a little ahead of me." That means nothing. For us believing in physics, the distinction between the past, present, and future is only a stubborn illusion. Quoted in Einstein, His Life and Universe by Walter Isaacson, 2008. Modern scientists are still under the same impression. We don't quite have the tools or the perceptual understanding of how that could work, why this would be the case, or even where to start. In an effort to clarify what this would look like if you were able to perceive it, I'll take you on a journey through your imagination to the ancient Colosseum in Rome, Italy, 81 AD. The scene is spectacular. There are tens of thousands of people walking around the Colosseum trying to funnel into the gates. This is an event where people traveled for thousands of miles to witness. This is the inaugural event for the Colosseum, a battle between animals and slaves to the death. Wave after wave of slaves and animals are helplessly thrown into an arena, one after another. There is blood everywhere, people screaming, the sound of animals tearing apart human flesh right in front of you. You're terrified as you back up far into the fence as you can, and you realize you're trapped. There's no escape from what's in front of you. The lion springs forward toward you and nothing happens. Now the Colosseum is empty. No animals, no death, no blood, only tourists. And you are cowering up against the wall in fear for your life. In the story above, both streams of time are happening simultaneously. You are merely able to adjust your frequency between dimensions at will, moving from one place in time to another. Everything that has ever happened or ever will happen is happening right now, all around you, wherever you are, every minute of every day. This may seem like a mystical woo-woo statement, but I'll elaborate in subsequent chapters on the importance of now. For most human beings, our lives are controlled by fear and worry about the future, based on something we've experienced in the past. Whatever it is you're worried about doesn't exist right now. So, if it doesn't exist, there is no need to worry about it. Worry and fear will only fill your now with stressful emotions and prolong the actual experience. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen. The goal is to stop trying to control your future, stop worrying about what happens in the past, and experience what is happening in front of you. Law 3. The Law of One. The Law of One is a very ancient idea, passed through many civilizations and twisted into many of the religions that rule the world at the beginning of the 21st century. It is the idea that we are all one single energy, one complete system. It seems like a strange concept to grasp, but on a molecular level, if you zoom in close enough with a microscope, you will not be able to differentiate where I stop existing and you begin. To illustrate the idea that we are all the same energy, I want you to imagine a single particle sitting in space. The particle is all there is. No other stars, no moons, just one particle in an infinite void. Since there is nothing but the particle, there is nothing to govern what the particle does. The spread of light is not a limitation for the particle, neither is gravity. The particle can travel anywhere it wants, as fast as it wants. So it does. It shoots left, then right, then in a circle, everywhere. Due to Einstein's theory of relativity, if you were looking at this particle from the outside, it would appear to be in all places at the same time. We would not see it travel from one place to another. It would simply be everywhere that we could possibly look for it. The entire void would appear to be full. An infinite void is instantly one infinite object. In every religion, we are told God is the creator of everything that exists. So if there is only one energy, which we refer to as God, Allah, prime creator, or any other name, and is considered to be an all-powerful creator, then everything in our universe is also part of that energy, including every human being on the planet, not to mention everything else we perceive. It's all of the same energy. It's all one object and one subject. This is the law of one. Law 4. The law of attraction. The law of attraction is popular among many circles, but it's often overlooked with skepticism, naivety, and, more times than not, flat-out misunderstood, which unfortunately has caused it to be disregarded as woo-woo by mainstream society. Nevertheless, the law of attraction is as real as any other force in the universe, and it's the lens through which you observe your reality. Imagine that your brain is similar to a radio antenna. When you think about something that makes you angry, you begin to experience the emotion of anger. The longer you think of those particular thoughts, the longer you hold the emotion of anger in your system. The physical emotional state you are experiencing is due to the chemicals being released in your body in response to environmental stress, which means when you think about things that make you angry, your actual physical state changes and chemicals that were not previously running through your system are now blasting through your bloodstream like a rocket and affecting the way you interpret literally everything in your environment. If that's not bad enough, while you are holding on to those thoughts, you are broadcasting a frequency from your antenna, the same frequency that you're experiencing as an emotion. So if you're angry, you're broadcasting anger. Think of the idea of broadcasting a signal from your brain being similar to a level in which your consciousness is vibrating. When your vibration is anger, you attract more things to be angry about. When your vibration is happy and experiencing good things, you will in fact be happy and experience good things. Seems like a pretty simple concept. Law 5. The law of constant change. We are in a universe of infinite expansion where change is constant. It's been said that no man walks through the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he is not the same man. No matter what scale you perceive, you will find that nothing stays the same for very long. The idea that everything in the universe is in a state of constant change is the final fundamental law of our universe. The only exception to the law of change are the first 4 laws. Therein, with the first 4 laws of the universe not changing, even the law of constant change is subject to change. Chapter 3. You. Who are you? Most of us have a pretty good grasp on who we are, right? We know what we like. We know what we don't like, we know what we believe in, and we can differentiate between right and wrong. I'd like to invite you to do a fun little exercise here, so grab a pen, a paper, to jot down a few of your thoughts. We're going to see if we can not only figure out who you are, but also someone else of your choosing, anyone you desire. Let's start by making a list of 5 words describing who you are. Use any 5 words you can think of that best fits your own perception of yourself. Try to be honest, but don't overthink this exercise. Now make a list of 5 words that describe someone you know. Who are they? It could be your husband, wife, brother, sister, cousin, or neighbor. Love them or dislike them, it doesn't matter. You can do this with as many people as you wish. It's actually quite informative. Okay. Now our list is made and we are ready to do a little digging. Take a look at your list. On each list, cross out any words referring to an occupation. An occupation is how you earn money, not a characteristic of you. Next, cross off any words that refer to an outcome of some sort. Words like winner, loser, or any derivative of the words. These are not states of being. They are states of ending and conclusion which can only be accessed in the past. They have nothing to do with now. Now, of the words left on the list you've made, circle each word with a positive meaning and underline all the words with a negative meaning. Once you've done this for each list you've made, count up all the circled words and underlined words, and this will give you a pretty good idea of your own opinion of yourself. I'll describe some positive perspectives you can develop here. If you have no words to circle or underline because they refer to your occupation or state of success, then I'm sorry to report, but your awareness of who you really has been severely skewed by the environment you surround yourself in. There is no possible way for you, in this moment, to be a winner or a loser. The same goes with your occupation. If you love your job and hope to do it forever, that's wonderful. What I'm saying is, if we as a species didn't use money, if everything was abundant and readily available in whatever quantities you desired, would you still do that job? Would you spend the same amount of time doing it every day? For the lucky few of us with the ability to say yes, congratulations to all of you. To everyone else, this is the first part of the identity that must be understood as false. You are far more than your occupation and far more than the outcome of a game. If your lists are filled with more positive words than negative, then you probably have a pretty good perception of yourself, which is not necessarily a good thing depending on what the words are. Words like loving, caring, helpful, and courteous carry a far different focus than words like handsome, beautiful, successful, and wealthy. The first set of words is focused outward toward others. The later is focused inward toward self. I would like to point out again that these are not statements of judgment. They are mere observations of what you wrote. If your lists are filled with more negative words than positive, odds are good that you have some self-esteem issues that will certainly be worked through and understood before the conclusion of this book. Words like selfish, angry, timid, and shy are all words that describe, among many other things, someone that doesn't feel worthy or accepted. Words like ugly, stupid, poor, and boring are all words that carry a huge amount of emotion. If you have these words on your list, or any similar words, you're not alone. There's a large portion of the global population that have been worn down by their environment to have a similar perception of themselves. This is unacceptable and will no longer be tolerated. This is the reason for this book. If you had any idea of who and what you are, those emotions would not be part of your existence. You can extrapolate this thinking to the other people you made a list about. Here are a few more questions to ask yourself as you go through each word in the list of each person. Question 1. Why did you choose that word to describe that person? Question 2. What did that person do to make you feel that way? Question 3. When that person did that, did they intend to make you feel that way? Or did they simply do something and you chose to get offended? Odds are good if you use negative words to describe someone, you realize it's possible you could be angry about nothing. You may be holding a grudge simply because you feel like you've been wronged in some way. Now, ask yourself, if you were in his shoes, living in his life, would you have done something differently? Would you have been intending harm by what you did? If you made a list for more than one person, were the lists negatively orientated or positively orientated? Someone who makes positively orientated lists for several people tend to be more appreciative of the people around them. Someone who makes negatively oriented lists about several people tend to be more self-centered in their thinking and will tend to blame everyone else for the problems in their lives. Please remember, my intention by doing this exercise is not to berate you or make you feel small by saying someone is self-centered. I'm simply stating what is. These lists were made by you, and they're a tiny glimpse of who you are in this current moment in time. There's no need to be offended by what is or take it personally. Identification of where you need emotional investigation is an unfortunate requirement of the process of evolution. You must be honest with yourself about who you are. Otherwise, your environment will constantly slap you in the face with that information until you wake up. What are emotions? I was watching a documentary a few years ago about the evolution of the tortoise on the Galapagos Islands. They described the process of evolution in reference to the length of the tortoise's neck. As the tortoise moved throughout the islands, they ate all the plant life within reach until there was no longer any food growing for them at that level anymore. So any tortoise with a neck long enough to reach their higher food was able to eat, live, and reproduce, thus passing along his genes with the long neck trait to his offspring. Any tortoise that couldn't reach the food due to the length of its neck died. So, if you're a tortoise living on one of the Galapagos Islands, there is an evolutionary advantage to having a long neck. It gives them a better chance of survival. So what do you think may be the evolutionary purpose for emotions? On an evolutionary basis, why do we get angry? Why do we feel sadness or happiness? Why do we sometimes feel excited while other times we can barely pull ourselves out of bed? If there is an evolutionary purpose for having a long neck or sharp claws, why not emotions? They must be there for a reason, right? What if the only reason we have emotions is to help us evolve? That would make sense. But evolve what, you ask? Evolve what they affect, of course. Your consciousness. The truth is that emotions are the key to everything. Until you begin to understand your emotions, you will wander around your world lost in a perpetual loop of infinite energy, reacting to everything in your environment, never understanding why you are constantly having to fight fate. Human beings, along with every other species on the globe, have emotions to help us understand our environment. So if you wander through life, suppressing your emotions and battling the cruel world around in some attempt to win or prove something to someone, you're completely missing the point. Here is a very simple breakdown of what the above paragraph is saying. 1. You have emotions to help you evolve. 2. You have emotions to help you understand your environment. 3. If you don't understand your emotions, you don't understand your environment. 4. If you don't understand your environment, you will never evolve. Now, if you're not interested in evolving as a human being, that's okay. Like I said before, maybe in your next life. For everyone else, please continue reading. To begin understanding how emotions work and why they are, imagine the emotion of anger. What does it look like? Imagine the image of anger floating in front of you, like a light reflecting off rippling water, waving back and forth in the air in front of you like a ghost. The emotion of anger is now an energetic entity all on its own, existing in a place without you. It has no awareness of you, of who you are, or that you even exist. As you stare in wonder and amazement at this entity floating in front of you, it shoots straight toward you and disappears into you as it hits you in the chest. Your heart starts to beat faster, your hands are starting to shake, and all you want to do is scream at someone. This entity, this emotion anger, has now entered your body. Because it's unaware of your existence, it will stay inside your body for as long as you let it. It is anger, and it vibrates at a certain frequency. As long as you hold that frequency with your thought, anger will vibrate with you simultaneously as one entity. It will affect your thoughts, decisions, and view of everything you perceive until you decide to let it go. All you have to do is notice it, realize what it is, and let it go. Change your thoughts to something else. Anything else at all. Think of cuddling with a puppy or something similar. The emotion will stay with you as long as you allow it. Holding on to anger is a choice you're making on a continual basis. No one else is doing it for you. If you can imagine all of your emotions are entities themselves, passed from being to being, causing a never-ending chain of events, you'll notice that no one has ever done anything to you. With every single memory you have, whether good or bad, every emotion you felt was a choice you made. And every choice you made subsequently was either clouded by that emotion or brightened by it. You decided to be sad sometimes, you decided to be happy sometimes. There's not a single case of anything that's ever happened to you where you didn't decide how you should be feeling. Which means the only person that keeps screwing you over and holding you back is you. Learning from your emotions. As I learned more about my own emotions, I was a little distraught by what I found. All in one thought, I understood how every fight I've ever been in was my fault. Every single person I looked at with hatred and anger wasn't doing anything wrong. They weren't doing anything to me at all. They were doing something, and I chose to be offended by it. I was the only one seeing what I wanted to see. I heard the story I wanted to hear. As I ran through every memory like a Rolodex in my mind, it was as clear to me as my own reflection. This was the most powerful realization I have ever had, and it was the trigger point of my emotional evolution. Growing up in a society where men don't cry, and showing any sort of emotion provokes the uncomfortability for everyone around you, it's not difficult to see why we block out our feelings and emotions to a point considering them the enemy. We believe we live in a cold and cruel world filled with hatred, killing, and death. It's much easier to exist if you can learn how to stop feeling things, especially when you have an affinity toward chaos and violence. Feelings are more of a hindrance than they are helpful. Once the connection was made in my brain with the idea that perhaps I'd been causing all my own problems, I noticed another pattern. On a daily basis, while I was minding my own business doing whatever I found myself doing, people would ask me if I was angry. Why do people always ask me that? What's wrong with these people? Just because I don't walk around with a goofy smile on my face all day doesn't mean I'm angry. These were all the thoughts I had for months while arguing with anyone who showed any concern for my state of happiness. My next epiphany was triggered by my dog Lilo. In my recent past, I spent a couple years building batteries in my garage. It was convenient to be able to work from home. I could go to work in my underwear if I felt like it. I could walk inside and get lunch in just a few steps and even take a nap whenever the mood would strike me. It was an ordinary day filled with the mundane tasks of packing batteries for shipment. I was going in and out of the house to grab different things, moving at a pretty brisk pace as I flew up and down the entry stairway. I grabbed something from the kitchen and shot back down the stairs, heading back to work when I realized I forgot my energy drink. I thought to myself, shit, you always forget something, stupid ass. Feeling disgusted with myself, I got to the bottom of the stairs, abruptly stopped, turned around, and ran back up the stairs. As I reached the top landing, my entire reality was shattered with the concussive force of a hand grenade. I was overwhelmed with emotion and proceeded to cry like my world was ending, had ended, and was never the reality that I thought it was. When I got to the top of the stairs, I looked down and seen Lilo, the sweetest dog on earth, was cowering in a puddle of her own urine because of the way I walked up the stairs. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was all my fault. Every fight, every argument, every moment of pain I have ever inflicted was caused by the way people were perceiving me. Now, it all made sense when I heard Jason Silva say, "I am not who I think I am. I am not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am." I wasn't hiding what I was thinking about people or what I thought about myself. I was wearing all of my hatred and disgust like a bright orange sign saying, "I hate everything and everyone." I suddenly found myself in a completely different universe. My entire life was changed by the way my dog looked at me. I could see how terrified she was by my presence, while I thought I was in a good mood. It brought into perspective how everyone must have been perceiving me my entire life, and how I looked back at them because of their perception of me. I didn't understand how I could have missed it for so long. I didn't understand why no one told me. Is it because they were too scared of the way I would react? Like I would fly off the handle if they told me I was being a dick. Or was I missing something? This seems like a problem that most people encounter every day, right? If we are all doing the same things, based on what we assume other people think, where did the original thought come from? Why was this so goddamn confusing? If I'm angry because that guy is looking at me funny, and he is looking at me funny because he thinks I'm angry, where did the anger come from? It's like this anger wasn't present until him and I were there to experience it together. And when we arrived to experience it, it was drawn to us like a magnet out of thin air. It was like the anger found two people that like to be angry, and it drew them together to be angry because that's what we were seeking. This is the law of attraction in the most simple format. It's both a complete definition and the minuscule tip of the iceberg. It is both the most misunderstood and the most vital piece of what has been hidden from us for millennia. The entire planet is focused on fear of the other for a reason. There's a reason we as a species are fed mystical stories full of riddle in all our religious texts. This is the key to global domination by spreading the agenda of consumerism and capitalism all over the world. You can think of the emotion of anger, as we talked about it above, as having the exact same properties as every other emotion you feel. Each emotion you have is triggered by the thoughts you're thinking. Imagine as the emotion is running through your body, it carries with it a certain vibration. When you're happy, you're vibrating at one frequency. When you're sad, you vibrate at another. Whether you're nervous, anxious, terrified, elated, ecstatic, or uncertain, all of these feelings, along with every other emotion and range therein, all carry a specific frequency of vibration. And when you are thinking sad thoughts, you're going to feel sad, and you're going to vibrate with the emotion of sadness. This will bring you more things to be sad about. Learning from your emotions doesn't need to be a traumatic experience like the one I've described above. As long as you understand, you have emotions for a reason. If someone says or does something that makes you feel a certain way, don't react. Instead, take a deep breath and ask yourself, why am I feeling this way right now? What did that person do to make me feel this way? Did that person do that to me? Or did that person do something and I decided to feel this way about it? When you start asking questions like this, you'll very quickly see that you have no reason to be upset or offended or anything else for that matter about something someone else is doing. If you really want to get a feel for why someone is acting a particular way, try putting yourself in their shoes. I guarantee you'll understand their emotions. Other people's shoes. The concept understanding who you are is not something easily attained if you've never seen from outside your little window of reality. As we know, the world we see is a direct reflection of the beliefs we hold, which, in a matter of speaking, means we can't see past our own bullshit. So how are we supposed to get an outside opinion if no one wants to offend anyone? If a person is incapable of telling you something in a way they believe you can receive it, then they'll most certainly keep their thoughts to themselves. So how do you get someone else's perspective without them giving it to you? How can you possibly interpret something that you can't access? Make no mistake about what I am asking you here. What I am asking is this. Is there a way to understand what another human being is thinking without having to force them to express their thoughts? In short, is telepathy possible? Is it possible to read someone else's mind? Contrary to popular belief, it turns out the answer is yes. We are a telepathic species without an awareness of our abilities. Oh man, there he goes, is the thought that crosses a lot of readers' minds after that statement, I'm sure. Rest assured, I'm not stating that I am telepathic and can read people's thoughts. That would be silly. What I am saying is that we can all read the thoughts of everyone around us. We are just not aware that they are other people's thoughts. We assume it originated in our own heads. This is a pretty deep subject, so I'm going to return to it in Chapter 4. The easiest way to understand what someone is thinking is to imagine how they are feeling when they are thinking it. Body language is a study that you can devote thousands of hours into learning and still not have a full understanding because there are infinite numbers of variables. The ability to read a person's body language accurately is an incredibly complex process, but you can learn how to teach yourself to do it intuitively in seconds. The key lies in your own imagination. This isn't something even you need someone else around to train. You can turn on the television, watch a video on your phone, be in the room with one person or a stadium with thousands of people. Wherever you see another human being, take notice of when they have a new thought sequence. What you're looking for is a reaction. When someone is feeling an emotion, they will move their body accordingly. The only thing required for you to understand the emotion someone else is having is to imagine your body or your facial expression configured in the same way. If the person is hunched over, imagine you are hunched over. How do you feel? What would you feel like if your body was configured in this shape? What you will notice is your mood will change, the chemicals in your brain will change, and you will begin to feel the actual physical emotion the other is feeling. Think about what you know about them while holding the emotion they are holding. You'll know then all you need to know. All that's left is understanding how to interpret the data you receive from them, how to read the informational packet you downloaded from the universe out of thin air. As the saying goes, as above, so below. When you put your body into any configuration, the chemicals in your brain are released to mimic the feeling your body is telling it to. Understanding this concept is the first step to understanding how to let your intuition, or higher self, guide you through your experience on Earth. Checking your vibration. The term vibrate has been used rather widely in reference to emotions and how you're feeling. Often it goes hand in hand with someone talking about the law of attraction or creating your own reality in one way or another. There is so much information out there and so much misunderstanding, it becomes easier every day to claim the whole idea is nonsense. I see links all over the internet about how to win the lottery with the power of positive thinking, claiming the power of magic words will bring you all the fancy little gadgets you desire. These ideas are on the right track, but are lacking in any sense of statistical probability, which makes them easily discarded by the general public. The general public, who require physical proof of what's real. If you can't smell it, or feel it, or taste it, or touch it, it clearly doesn't exist. One of the world's leading physicists, Michio Kaku, in a short video produced by BigThink.com, stated, "All the tiny subatomic particles and quarks that we see in nature are nothing but musical notes on a tiny vibrating string. Physics is the law of harmony that you can write on those vibrating strings. Chemistry is nothing but the melodies you can play on interacting vibrating strings. The universe is a symphony of vibrating strings, and what is known as the mind of God that Einstein wrote about for the last 30 years of his life is the cosmic music resonating through 11-dimensional hyperspace. In fact, we are nothing but melodies, nothing but cosmic music played out on vibrating strings and membranes, obeying the laws of physics, which is nothing but the laws of harmony of vibrating strings." Another of our leaders in scientific thought of modern times is Brian Greene. He gave a TED Talk explaining how our understanding of the universe has evolved from Einstein's notion of gravity and space-time to superstring theory, where minuscule strands of energy vibrating in 11 dimensions create every particle and force in the universe. Atoms are not the end of the story. They have little electrons that swarm around a central nucleus with protons and neutrons. Even the protons and neutrons have particles inside of them known as quarks. Here's where conventional ideas stop, and here's the new idea of string theory. Deep inside any of these particles, there is something else. There is something else in a dancing filament of energy. It looks like a vibrating string. That's where the idea of string theory comes from. He went on to state, they produce the different particles making up the world around us. This is what the ultra-microscopic landscape of the universe looks like. It's built up of a huge number of these vibrating filaments, vibrating energy, and vibrating different frequencies that produce these particles. The particles are responsible for the richness in the world around us. I could list 1,000 quotes from 1,000 very intelligent individual scientists that have come to similar conclusions. Everything that we experience in our universe is simply our interpretation of energy across the set of vibrating strings and membranes. No, string theory hasn't been proven yet. When our species finally does develop and understand the proper mathematics, I'm certain that our scientists will confirm the existence of multiple dimensions and vibrating energy. This is the only probability available to this reality. The only variable remaining is time. Which is unfortunate for the guys doing the math, since it's so difficult to see past our own reality bubble. There are too many variables in their equation because of their distortions of perception. They said time doesn't exist, so why do they include it in the math? Time is a figment of our imagination. As such, anything with a basis of time would be as well. Maybe the math would make sense if one thing we thought as being so important wasn't even part of the equation. As a matter of fact, most of the variables considered to be important may not be a factor at all. I really have no idea about the mathematics to describe our universe, and I'm not talking shit about the people that are trying to figure it out. A conceptual understanding of physics is needed to understand our environment better. In fact, Neil deGrasse Tyson was the man who introduced me to my new way of thinking. Thank you, Neil, for dedicating your life to the pursuit of knowledge. Anyone interested in understanding your universe should check out his work. I was simply trying to state, you will always find what you are seeking, without exception. So, be aware of your object of attention. So what does this mean for everyday folks? You don't have to understand the mathematics to understand how to use the environment around you to your advantage. Imagine you are a small trout trying to swim upstream. The water is flowing past you incredibly quickly, and you are having a difficult time struggling swimming against the current. When you learn more about who you are, and you become more aware of your vibrations to a point of possessing the ability to change it at will, you will finally be able to stop swimming against the metaphorical current. For the first time in your life, you have the ability to sit back and enjoy the ride. Chapter 4. The Law of Attraction. Introduction to the Law of Attraction. TheLawOfAttraction.com defines the law of attraction as, simply put, the law of attraction is the ability to attract into our lives whatever we are focusing on. It is believed that, regardless of age, nationality, or religious belief, we are all susceptible to the laws which govern the universe, including the law of attraction. It is the law of attraction which uses the power of the mind to translate whatever is in our thoughts and materialize them into reality. In basic terms, all thoughts turn into things eventually. If you focus on negative doom and gloom, you will remain under that cloud. If you focus on positive thoughts and have goals that you aim to achieve, you will find a way to achieve them with massive action. For most people, the law of attraction is looked at as pseudoscience and disregarded as anything worth paying attention to. Most skeptics look at it as a way to trick yourself into being happy. Like you're a weak person for making a decision to think about things that you enjoy, as opposed to things you don't. As if you'll be better off as a human being if you focus on all the shitty things around you. These are the same people that will tell you it's okay to be angry. It's okay to focus your will on other people. It's okay to go to war with a small country. We're bigger than them. We will win the war and take their stuff. Tricking your mind producing more beneficial chemicals through your bloodstream will always benefit you. This is not a trick at all. This is having the ability to stop reacting to your environment like an idiot, plain and simple. Decisions made with the basis of fear or worry of the future affect so much more than anyone realizes. Any decision made in fear will only draw you to more fear. This isn't folklore. This is one of the fundamental forces of the universe. If you make a choice of war, you are aligning your vibrations to war. When you get involved in a war, this makes it easier to continue to the next war because you have aligned to it previously. You know what this experience is like. You can predict its probable events. It doesn't matter the reason. Whether you are after someone's oil or after their opium fields, You are certainly more likely to go to war with another country if you continue to make decisions aligning to that system. Fear breeds fear. Love breeds love. Remember, you don't have to believe these words for them to be true. You'll figure it all out eventually, maybe in your next life. That too is the only probability available for your reality. We have all come to this plane of existence to experience the catalyst that drives evolution. You are here to evolve. You will be here until you evolve enough to understand where you are and make a decision to be somewhere different. So take all the time you need. For those who are ready, I will describe to you how to prove these concepts to yourself. If you take the time to understand this information, you will have all the tools needed to make a dramatic shift in your reality. The power of thought. If you were told every thought you had would become real right before your eyes, would you make an effort to monitor what you think about? If I told you it was possible to influence your daily experience without any physical effort necessary, it may seem far-fetched. It sounds like a fairy tale, or perhaps the plot of a movie. But is it more than that? I must admit, when I first came across the law of attraction, I was skeptical to say the least. It seemed like a fun idea though. I found a movie called The Secret. I'm sure you've heard of it. I remember clearly what I thought when the movie finished. Seems like an interesting way to trick yourself into being happy. I didn't pay much attention to it for quite a while, until one day while droning away building batteries in my garage, I made the connection to the entirety of the idea. When I woke up that morning, I remember thinking, this is going to be a shitty day. I'm broke as hell, and it's only going to get worse. I'm going to lose a lot of money today. I then wandered around the kitchen for a bit, had some coffee, and went about my day. Within about an hour, I was able to witness exactly how powerful the idea was. I worked until around noon with YouTube videos playing in the background. I don't remember what I was watching. It was something irrelevant and mind-numbing. I received my third call for the day from a customer telling me his batteries weren't working and needed a repair, which would bring me to a whopping total of $1,200 in losses for that day. The call was the next trigger in my awakening. When I hung up the phone, I realized that I had predicted this would happen when I woke up. It was literally the first thought I had when I opened my eyes. Over what seemed to be the next hour, but in actuality was closer to 1 or 2 seconds, I had connected every word I have ever said to everything I've experienced. It was true? No way. No way. I don't fucking believe it. I kept thinking as I was pacing back and forth, replaying every thought that has ever passed through my head. Every memory I scrolled through was another confirmation of the terrifying realization. It was me. It was all me. Everything I have ever experienced in my life, from the worst pain to the greatest ecstasies, were all product of my thoughts. From every angle I could perceive, there was no getting around the truth. From the reality I was now perceiving, even the weather was dependent on the mood I was in. It was a weird day for me to say the least. I went to sleep that night with a decision to wake up in the morning with a different thought. The next day was incredible. As I woke up, I intentionally had the thought, today is going to be a good day. I got out of bed, turned on the coffee maker, and hopped in the shower. After I finished brushing my teeth and getting dressed, it was time to drop off my kids at school. I grabbed my phone off the charger before I go and noticed I already have 2 large online sales. Sweet, I thought. Maybe there is something to this whole idea of positive thinking. By noon, I had another 3. And by the end of the day, I had made a total profit of about $1,500. Wow, I thought. What kind of magic fairy tale land am I living in here? Things got a little weird in my life after that. It seemed as if I was losing my mind. The more attention I paid to this phenomenon, the more often I was able to predict what was going to happen in my life. It got to the point where I wasn't sure if I was creating the future with my own thoughts, or if I was reading the future of what's coming. I needed to understand other people's opinions on the idea. I need some sort of confirmation that I wasn't nuts. As I did more research, I found article after article written by skeptics, and it wasn't long before I came to the conclusion that I was imagining it all. Here I was, a grown-ass man, being tricked by some nonsense I found on the internet. I was actually confused and embarrassed I fell for a mind trick. I've always been like a human lie detector. I know what most people are thinking and why they're thinking it, most times before they do, based on body language alone. So how was it possible to completely fool me like that? For the first time, I had a taste of mental instability. I was so confused by what was real and what was in my head. I was unable to make a decision. I hit a point where I had to stop all the questions. I had to stop thinking and analyzing. I withdrew from my pursuit of understanding our true reality due to a deepening fear of not being able to return to a normal state of being. I was convinced I was about to end up just like everyone else who went too far, like all of the other lost souls trapped in a prison of confusion and self-deceit. After a few months had passed, I was back to normal, you might say. I was able to shift the focus of my attention from all the confusion of my own consciousness and return to a life of worrying about money, working as hard as I could to make very little money, and reacting to the environment around me. As usual, I found something interesting to watch on YouTube and went on performing my daily job building batteries. I would often listen to different podcasts or documentaries in an attempt to fill my brain with new information. I've always had the urge to pursue some level of understanding of what I was missing. It was a feeling of being lied to, like the entire world missed something. What if everything we treat as real scientific information was misinterpreted? What if we had made some assumptions, and those assumptions had influenced the course of our development? It would be possible, I guess, but who am I to question the most brilliant minds on Earth? It was that same thought that drew me back to studying more about what we call mental illness. I was absolutely certain that the geniuses coming up with treatments for mental illness were off track. When I reflected back on my experiences of what I considered to be mental instability, it no longer appeared to me as if I was losing my mind. Instead, it appeared as if I was actually gaining the ability to use it more effectively. Now that I had time for my mind to reflect, with the clear-thinking mind of a normal person, it was clear to me that I was simply misinterpreting what I was experiencing while it was happening. Thoughts are things. The more I try to disprove the idea, the more I see the validity in it. It's true that our thoughts are things that are just as tangible as the chair you're sitting in. I said out loud several months earlier, I'm going to understand what no one else on Earth seems to understand. At the time, I wasn't sure what I was even trying to understand, or why I suddenly yelled out those words. But now I could see what was being missed by society as a whole, and how the wrong course of treatment was being taken. If you went to the hospital with a dislocated shoulder, you wouldn't let the doctor remove your arm to alleviate the pain, nor would you allow the doctor to hit you with a baseball bat in the shoulder every single day, without end, in an attempt to acclimate yourself to the pain. So why is it we as a collective encourage someone with an injured brain to continue beating their brain with a proverbial baseball bat? Then, when their bodies begin to reject all this punishment, we fight that rejection with a bigger bat. After having all these realizations while shopping at the grocery store one afternoon, the pattern started to become clear again. I can see what was happening, as delusional as it sounds. I made a decision to understand what others were missing, and now I seem to be seeing my environment differently. I said I wanted to understand what other people don't understand, and now there was evidence of that happening. I was at a point of peace with my conclusions that no one can tell me otherwise. The words I use and the thoughts I have actually do have an effect on the reality I experience. It's happened my entire life and I didn't realize it. It was apparent the words I use on a daily basis kept me in the very same reality. I used to think I would always be broke, and I was always broke. It's okay though, I used to think. Whenever I really need money, I always have it. Sure enough, that was true as well. Shit, I was definitely doing this to myself. I needed a new way of thinking and needed it fast. Deliberate creation. As time went on, I was watching my words and monitoring my thoughts, scared I would say the wrong thing and inadvertently cause more problems for myself. It became a game of word tricks I used whenever I found myself saying a sentence that made me feel bad. Instead of thinking I'm broke, I changed the thought to, the universe is going to bring me money very soon. I switched, I don't like this, to, I want this. The pattern seemed to fit somewhat, but not really. I kept saying positive affirmations and good things kept happening. One day, while attempting to harness the energy of the universe with my consciousness, I exclaimed, I want to help people. The universe is going to show me a way to help people. I went through my day looking for signs from God, or the universe, or magical little fairies. I didn't know where the signs were coming from, but for a guy like me, it was a pretty different universe than the one I was in only a few months prior. I've always considered the idea of God or religion to be a silly concept designed to take advantage of weak people in their time of need. Now, I found myself doing something that could only be considered praying to a higher power, except I seemed to be the one dictating the events. To me, that was an incredibly interesting concept. Was this what was being hidden from us? Was this all the conspiracy theories are about? Were we simply being distracted from the last 12,000 years by the idea of an external God? Can everyone do this, or just me? It couldn't be just me because I heard about it originally from my wife and have been ignoring it for years. Have we been tricked into giving away our power by placing it in the hands of some external creator being? Is that why there's so much fear-mongering propaganda being pumped through our television on an infinite loop? 3 days later, I received a call from a gentleman I met a week prior. He said he met some people the night before who wanted to meet me. He went on to explain that he had just come from Morocco and were looking for some information about CBD medicine and the medical aspects of marijuana because they were trying to help a small village in the mountains above Chefchaouen, Morocco. This was what I was waiting for. Only 3 days prior, I must have used the correct magic words to conjure up this meeting. Success. I went to meet the couple that night. It was a husband and wife around the same age as myself. Ahmed and May told me about their travels and how they came to find themselves in the place they were, which was a land on the other side of the planet, searching for a way to help a village that they found to be filled with nothing but pure love. It was really quite inspiring to hear Ahmed speak. He was a tall Kuwaiti man with an incredible ability to capture your imagination. We spoke for a few hours about how they were interested in information about sustainable living, hydroponic and aquaponic farming, automated irrigation system, and anything else I might be aware of that could benefit a small village of about 400 farmers. Ahmed and I immediately hit it off and became fast friends. He was on his own spiritual journey, similar to mine in a way, but with the perspective and history from a part of the globe I knew nothing about. And I was that link for him. A window into the world he sees on TV every day back in Kuwait. It was quite funny how we used to discuss the idea that he felt like he was stepping into a different universe. He kept telling me how I was the American stereotype depicted in the shows he watches. It made him feel like he was a character in a cosmic story, and when he felt it, I felt it too. At this point, it was spring of 2017, and I was on a full-tilt spiritual mission. I was watching for signs in everything I seen. I began having conversations with myself via the use of the TV. I would simply think of a question, then wait for the answer to come out of the TV. It was the craziest damn thing I had ever experienced. Now, I finally understood what people with mental illness meant when they would say, "I seen it in the TV." It was then things became clear to me. Either I was engulfed deeply in some sort of mental illness as well, or mental illness doesn't really exist. It seemed as if everything we termed as mental illness was simply one person telling another person what's real and what's not, based on the limitations of their own perspective. It wasn't long before I found myself watching The Matrix, a movie that seemed to be the exact description of my reality. 3 days earlier, my wife called me from work. She was the GM for a property management company at the time. She told me someone moved out of one of the complexes she managed and left 2 rabbits in an empty apartment. She said, "Should I bring them home?" "Of course," I said with a grin. I already had 2 chickens, 2 turtles, 2 dogs, and a pond full of tilapia, so I was more than happy when she asked if I was interested in adding more critters to the mix. I'm glad I said yes, because the experience that followed was incredible. Near the beginning of The Matrix, when Neo was woken up by his computer, the monitor displayed the sentence, "Follow the white rabbit." Then, he's startled by a knocking on the door to find a girl with a tattoo of a white rabbit on her shoulder. I thought to myself, I have a white rabbit. I was just thinking the question, what's next? Now, I see something that says follow the white rabbit, and I literally just got a white rabbit. I need to build a bigger enclosure for these rabbits. Off I went to Home Depot gathering some material. When I got home, I grabbed 3 packets of the magical elixir I love so much, Alpha Brain, made by a company called Onnit. I then, in a ritualistic manner, stated my intention verbally into the universe. I choose to take the red pill and travel to Wonderland in an effort to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. It was the most powerful and impactful day that I never imagined could happen, but there it was, happening. As I continued progress through the construction of the new rabbit house, I came to realization after realization of every question that came into my awareness. It was incredibly hot that day, so I came inside to drink some water and take a break. I sat down on the couch and leaned back, and boom, I was hit with the overwhelming understanding that I was God. The actual resurrection of Jesus Christ. The only reason this universe even exists is because I am here to perceive it. I went from feelings of intense love of everything I had created to an immediate feeling of terror when I understood what I had seen. It was exactly like they said in the movie. I'm never going to be free from knowing what I now know. I've seen past the confusion of everything in our experience. I can see every level of the confusion built into the system. I understood why 2 people can never experience the same thing because everything in our experience is subjective. All the Bible stories made sense in a way they never had before. It was absolutely clear that I had seen through the proverbial code in the Matrix. The only conclusion I could see was that I can see all of this with such a deep knowing of truth because I am the one who wrote the code that governs the program. In one split second, I went from being the most powerful force in the entire universe to nearly committing suicide from the horror of the realization. It was a day I'll never forget. It was a day I completely misunderstood the meaning of. It was the trigger for my newfound pursuit to change the world. I started focusing on ways to upgrade our species at will, dreaming up different electronic devices to attach to the body like you would a webcam to a laptop. Drawing up plans for devices to do everything from cure the world of mental illness to studying Tesla's work on free energy. The things I had been tinkering with for years in the background suddenly came into focus. The ideas were pouring out of me like you tipped over a bucket of water. It was a pretty awesome feeling. I talked to Ahmed about the experience I had while following the White Rabbit, and he explained to me that I was not the first person to come to the conclusion that they were the reincarnation of Jesus Christ or thought they were God. Hearing that in those terms certainly made sense, though I still wasn't sure why it would be possible. Later, I went to see my friend Josh to get his thoughts on the subject. I was at a point in my head where I became increasingly more confused by every interaction I had. I told him what I was experiencing, and he explained to me he had a similar experience when he was going through some difficult times of his own. We were talking about how confusing things could get inside your own head if you let them. I'd asked him that day if he had ever met my friend Ahmad. I clearly remember introducing the two of them, but I wanted to be sure Josh remembered it too. I was beginning to question whether he and May even existed, wondering if I found an imaginary friend for myself. He confirmed the meeting and assured me that Ahmad was a real human being, which was a relief to say the least. A few more weeks went by, spending a lot of time with Ahmad and getting to know his culture. He invited me to come to Morocco with them, and I immediately accepted. We were throwing around ideas, brainstorming different ways to help people. Between the two of us, we had concluded that we were going to change the world, and it would start with a tiny village at the top of a mountain in Africa. We were on a mission to harness the power of positive thinking and prove to the world things can be done differently. When I arrived in Casablanca, it was a lot for me to process. This was nothing like the land I was used to. I was surrounded by people that I couldn't communicate with, hoping I would be able to find the person I was told would be picking me up from the airport. I found two men waiting for me. Each one greeted me with a hug and a smile from ear to ear. Even after seeing nothing but pure love from everyone in front of me, I was still terrified by this faraway land due to the constant news stories about terrorism and missing travelers. Then, I remembered I was creating this experience. Everything's going to be perfect. There was no other possibility. Momentums of energy. For the first time in my life, I was proud of who I was. I was in control of my own destiny and on a mission to fulfill it. The idea was to go to Morocco, make a bunch of money, then use that money to save our species by dropping nuclear love bombs everywhere I went. A month after I left, I returned to my home in California with a massive negative balance in my bank accounts and a sort of taste in my mouth for the people I was traveling with. I couldn't understand how this could possibly have happened. What I was certain of, though, was that I was not Jesus, I wasn't creating anything other than delusions, and now I have to explain to my wife why I continue to be such an incompetent failure. I had pressed myself to the exact kind of psychosis you read about. I was back in California with no understanding of what happened and completely aware of my mental instability. For the next 3 months, I spent as little time as I could thinking about anything other than what was in front of me. I destroyed 3 friendships during that time because I was so devastated by the experience, I was lashing out at everyone. I didn't return any phone calls or emails. I closed the door to the outside world in every way I could. When I was at the airport on my way home, I found a music video from the rapper Yellow Wolf. It was uploaded the very same day. The theme of the song became my new motto before I landed back in America. It was called Roll Your Boat. The chorus line was what caught my full awareness. He states, "Even if the whole world knows, I don't give a damn about what they think. I don't have to stand up to your gun. I don't have to sit down when you say. Tell me I'm overboard. The truth is that you just want to see me sink. If there's any room left on that ship, you don't have to save any room for me, because I'm on my own boat, even when it rains. I'm doing my own thing, even when it rains. And I will stay afloat, even when it rains, because I've got my own boat." Let me ask you, does it sound like there may be a difference in the two ideas I was calling my reality? The idea of saving the world is a much different idea than I've got my own boat. I didn't realize it when it happened, but I was in a state of depression. Somehow I lost momentum. Somehow I gave up. It happened without my awareness. I don't know how long I had been in this state, but I know it started in the middle of my trip. I know it affected the outcome of the trip and the relationships I had developed. Aligning to what you want. After a few months of seclusion and removing myself from any sort of decision-making process, I was able to gain some sort of stability in my own head. Things started to find a sense of normalcy in my life again. I had my feet under me and a focused business plan. Everything was progressing in the direction of a stable income. Unfortunately, I could feel my marriage beginning to give. I could see the disappointment in my wife's face every time I looked at her. It wasn't her fault. She was trying to be supportive, but wasn't able to figure out a way to do so. I was still filled with a sense of inadequacy and worthlessness, and I was emitting it like a radio antenna. I made a decision that day, the first actual decision I had made in months. I realized my wife was looking at me like I was a failure. Then I realized she is seeing me exactly as I was presenting myself, as someone with no confidence, someone who has been pursuing self-employment for the last 2 years without showing any signs of actually making any money. I realized I was now the exact opposite of the person I once was, caught in a perpetual loop of doubt, fear, and unworthiness. As I had this thought, my attention was suddenly brought to the television. I heard the powerful voice of Tom Bilyeu state, "If you don't like who you are, then change it. No one can change your life for you except you. You're the only one with that power." Shit, I thought to myself. I knew what I heard. I knew what was needed. I also knew I was back to treating the television like a magic mirror on the wall. All of these thoughts weren't what I wanted to hear, but I thought, thanks, Tom, and proceeded on with what I needed to do. If I wanted my wife to look at me as something different than a loser, I was going to have to stop being a loser. I was going to have to remove all of this self-destructive behavior, which I can clearly see has been in control of my entire life. It was so clear to me when I heard it. There was no longer a question of how to change my situation. Stop defeating myself with my own thoughts. In a moment of absolute clarity, I knew. All that I had to do to change is change. Now that I was clear thinking and positively oriented, the ideas began to flow again. Every minute I was working, I was focused on changing my thought patterns. I was on a mission to align my energy to be in the receiving mode. I was on such a high-flying disc that I refused to acknowledge any form of negative thinking. When I can feel negativity coming from anyone, they were met with a metaphorical brick wall. It simply couldn't penetrate my newfound defenses. Back to work I went, following the signs I was given by the universe, letting the television, radio, and anything else with writing on it guide me to the solution I was looking for, in search of a deeper explanation. I knew if I told anyone I was taking directions from TV characters and perfectly plugged lines from the song I heard on the radio, I was sure to be seen as unstable. This is a very precarious position to be in, but I no longer cared if I appeared to be crazy. If I was on my way to being the guy everyone thought was a little weird, I was fine with that. At least I would have figured it out. I was aware I still didn't know what's real and what's not. And I came to the conclusion that I wasn't going to figure it out unless I removed all fear of it happening. I had to press forward with my focus. I was processing more information simultaneously than at any point I had reached before. Doubt no longer existed for me. When the doubt faded away, the fear went with it. It was only after releasing my fear, I found the next trigger in my awakening. Everything around me was pushing me toward meditation. I had meditated a few times prior, but I didn't know anything about the idea. Just sit down and clear your head. Focus on breathing. That sounds easy enough. In the beginning, it didn't seem to do anything. I was relaxing and all that, but I felt like I was wasting my time. After a little research on the subject, I finally started to have some interesting things happen. Chapter 5. Meditation. Meditation is the hardest, easiest exercise I have found thus far. What I mean is, in order to meditate, the only requirement is you stop thinking. The problem with that is, it requires you to stop thinking. Not an easy task as far as most people are concerned, and I was no different. How is sitting down and turning myself off supposed to help? I'm going to attempt to describe things differently than you've heard them described before. Hopefully, by the end of this chapter, you'll have a better idea of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what's happening when you get there. This is the process I use, and in no other way means you must do it in the same way. This is only a description of one way to do it. If you find a different way more effective, more power to you. Go forth and develop your craft. What is meditation? Meditation, as defined by Google. 1. The action or practice of meditating. A life of meditation. Synonyms: contemplation, thought, thinking, musing, pondering, consideration, reflection, deliberation, rumination, brooding, reverie, brown study, concentration. 2. A written or spoken discourse expressing considered thoughts on a subject. Plural noun, meditations. His later letters are intense meditations on man's exploitations of his fellows. There you have it. The definition is incredibly helpful. No wonder there's so much confusion on the subject. A little better description, in my opinion, would be to shut down your thinking so you can hear yourself speak. Sounds a little zen, but that's the idea, I think, to turn off everything you're imagining so you can perceive what's really there. I heard a description of the brain in reference to its environment that opened my eyes quite a bit. They were talking about the fact that brains never see the light of day. It's locked in a little black box inside your skull. It sees nothing. It hears nothing. All it does is interpret electrical signals it perceives in its environment. The eyes send electricity, as do the ears. Your brain receives signals when you've been touched softly on your skin, and another signal when your skin is cut by a knife. So, meditation isn't as much as turning off the brain as it is refusing to use the receptors connected to the external environment. What's the point? It's difficult to understand what to do if you're not quite sure what you're trying to accomplish. In its very basic form, what you're trying to accomplish is alignment. What that means is literally a sense of peace. Typically, the thoughts that are flowing through our consciousness at any given moment are thoughts filled with worry about the future. We don't notice them because the thoughts are always there, running like a background program on your cell phone. If you can remove these thoughts by focusing on your breath, you will feel a sensation of relaxation set in. This is the best place to start if you're new to the idea of meditating. It's more difficult than it sounds to sit down and shut up, but once you get the hang of it, it's a great way to take the edge off if you're having some issues with overthinking. There's no time limit you should meet, or any certain time of day that is best. At this point in your exploration, your only goal should be to focus on shutting down your perception of a world outside of yourself. Your higher self. The concept of a person's higher self is another one of those confusing terms. Imagine that your consciousness, or soul, has spent many lifetimes as a human being on Earth. Hundreds of lifetimes of experience lie in what you currently consider to be your past. Hundreds of lifetimes of experience in your future, both on Earth and on far-off star systems in the universe. In the same way that I describe how now is the only thing that exists in Chapter 1, all of these lifetimes are happening here in the now, simultaneously, across an infinite number of dimensions. Picture it like an infinite stack of old movies. The film is completely unraveled and laying across the room in one single line. Each film being an adjacent reality, and they are stacked on top of each other in a tower as tall as you can perceive. Now reach up with your hand and smash the colossal tower straight downward into the thickness of a single layer. Then intertwine, invert, and spiral the stack outward in all directions. This is our universe. This is the nature of existence. What this means is that you exist in all these adjacent probabilities at the same time. Anything you've learned in any of these lifetimes is accessible to you in all of these lifetimes. You simply have to realize the illusion of separation and remove it. Harboring the idea that you are your body or you are a separate entity from the one next to you is installing a psychic filter in your consciousness. Everything in your experience is a direct mirror of your own perceptions. Everything you perceive is created by what you believe to be true. We are, as a species, living in a mathematical matrix of perception. Everything we see in front of us, we consider to be real and tangible, is only there because we have agreed as a collective that it's so. Unfortunately, this is the only vocabulary I have to describe the idea in a way that we can conceptualize, but that does not negate the implication of its meaning. To put it bluntly, if you are interested, you can train your intuition and your consciousness to merge. You can then let your life be guided by the intuition of your higher self. You can literally take your own advice from the future version of you if you understand how to interpret the information you're receiving. During a deep state of meditation, you can feel a change in the way your body feels. Some say it feels like levitating. Others feel like their skin's tingling and vibrating. What that is a literal change in your vibration. This is the point where you are now receiving thoughts. As long as you can hold this vibration, any thought you have will originate from your source energy, not from your outside environment. These are thoughts you receive, not thoughts you have. There's a huge difference. You are guessing when you have an idea of what to do. Your higher self, the future version of you, already knows what works and what doesn't. Source energy. Connecting your consciousness to source energy is a multi-step and multi-dimensional concept. As you may have guessed, The term source energy is referring to the source of all the energy in the universe. As I described in the Law of One, mentioned in Chapter 1, we are all one energy. Every tree, every flower, every animal and rock. We are the same energy vibrating at different frequencies. Everything in existence is endowed with consciousness and the ability to perceive its environment, even if you don't believe it to be so. Once you understand this in a way that you believe it, you will then have the ability to inhabit what is referred to as the Christ consciousness. When you are in touch and connected to all that is, you are then able to see through the eyes of Christ. This is the cosmic story found in the Bible and other religious texts. The resurrection of Christ never had anything to do with a man coming back to save the world. It was a prediction of a time when man realized himself as a divine creature with the power to create worlds. This was the story he told. This was his legacy. A legacy of a world free of fear and violence, a world free of famine and full of abundance. He tried to show the people that they had power to heal themselves, that they too have all the energy of the source by performing what people around him perceived to be miracles. He even tried to correct the mistakes made in the telling of his story, which was again misunderstood. Since that time, in what we perceive as our reality, religions of all faiths and creeds have been waiting for someone to save them. The most tragic thing about it is the true meaning of his message has been missing for so long. We're now close to a point of self-destruction as a species. This is the 5th time humans have reached this point on Earth, a point of realization and a decision for a particular trajectory of reality. When we choose a reality filled with fear and separation of self from other selves, we are assured to repeat mistakes made by past incarnations of our civilization, civilizations that have since been erased by time. The resurrection of Christ's consciousness, the embodiment of love in its true form, is said to bring in the kingdom of heaven. Tell me, if we lived in a world where what you thought about and focused on became real and tangible, and there was no fear of anything or anyone because people aren't afraid of someone killing them for their stuff, what would you call that? Sounds like heaven on earth, doesn't it? All of the parables of religion are stories of a cosmic drama that have been playing out in our system for billions of years. A story of creation and destruction. A story of perception and judgment. A story of a search outward affecting the search inward. Tuning your frequency. As I'm sure you can imagine, I had to do some pretty serious soul searching to come up with these conclusions. Once I started meditating, it took a couple months before I was even able to relax while I was relaxing. Once you become more familiar with your emotions and the physical sensation your body has when processing those emotions, you will be able to start asking questions and getting answers. You will be able to receive a thought and accurately interpret its intention. Meditation is a gradual process. When you first start, maybe you'll do it for 5 or 10 minutes at a time. Once you start to see and feel what meditation is doing for your life, it won't be long until you're sitting as often as you can to download more information. The key is trusting your intuition. Knowing what you know is true will bring a confidence you never imagined. Here is a recap to make it simple. 1. Sit down in a comfortable position. 2. Focus on your breath as you breathe in and out. 3. Imagine the oxygen filling your lungs and spreading throughout your bloodstream. 4. When you notice you're thinking about something, return to step 2 and repeat the process. 5. You will then feel your energy shift, your frequency change, or a sensation of tingling throughout your body. 6. Try to resist the urge to analyze the feeling and let it persist as long as possible. 1. This is where you're downloading information from your future self, source energy, or any other consciousness you're connected to. Depending on your focus, your intuition, or your level of consciousness, you will be receiving information from your support entities. 7. Let the info download in a form of vibration until you have an urge to complete the meditation. 8. Go on about your day, looking through magazines, watch a movie, do anything you want. Just go out and give yourself an opportunity to be presented with inspiration. 9. When you receive inspiration and you're aligned to it and don't ignore it, meaning you agree and enjoy the idea, you'll know what to do from there. Just do whatever you're inspired to do. It could be take out the trash. It might be go to the mall. You are now guiding yourself through your life. If you are intending to see the inspiration for movement, you will see it. This is the process I use to understand and communicate this information. What you're reading now is a product of simple meditation. I've been collecting data and storing variables in my head for so long, I was trying to sort through what seemed like an infinite amount of incredibly confusing information. One day I received an inspiration to make a simple list of what I thought was most important. An hour later, I was looking at the outline of this book. Shortly after that, the information was complete and all the ideas were perfectly described. I found it hard to believe until I experienced it for myself. I dare you to try it. What's the worst that can happen? You begin enjoying your life a little? Sounds like a decent trade-off to me. Akashic Records. Due to the nature of the universal oneness, everything that has ever happened seems to be happening at the same time. According to the religion we call modern science, time is only a figment of our perception. You can't be at a place without a time in the same way you can't be at a time without a place, which is where you get the word space-time. You can't have one without the other. In the same manner, you can't have matter without the consciousness to perceive it. The high priests of modern science tell us the stories of the Big Bang. It's easy to see how they came to this conclusion when you look at the math. You can easily demonstrate the expansion of energy with a couple equations and a few pictures of the stars. When you create a digital model of the observable universe, you can see it in visible form. Then you can rewind the tape, so to speak, to see how everything appears to originate from one infinitesimally small point containing all the matter in the universe. Then boom, the expansion begins. Unfortunately, this is an illusion. The universe in which our consciousness is part is a system of expansion which has no beginning and no end. What we see as other stars and galaxies is only a distortion of perception caused by what's referred to as the separation of self from other selves. The illusion of separation persists so deeply in our collective consciousness, it's caused us to perceive a system of labels. What we think of as a gray sweatshirt is seen by us all as a gray sweatshirt. The same thing goes for the table in your kitchen and what you perceive as your body. When we look into space with our modern telescopes, we find an infinite number of stars surrounded by an infinite number of planets, all combined in an infinite number of galaxies. Prior to that, we were only aware of the planets in our solar system, and prior to that, we were the only planet in our solar system. With each step, the tools we used to perceive the next discovery were an enhancement of the previous technology. The better the gear, the more we can see. There is a drawback to this, though, which was pointed out by Erwin Schrödinger in 1935 with a thought experiment known as Schrödinger's cat. Here's an idea that's been misunderstood by nearly everyone that's ever heard it, the effect of which is still something we have to deal with on a daily basis. It clouds our judgment and has caused a shift of focus, so to speak, within our species. I'll give you a simple breakdown of the thought experiment. First, you would set up a device which would be hooked up to a timer which may or may not release the hammer attached to it. Then, place it in the box with the live cat and a small vial of hydrocyanic acid. When the timer goes off, if the hammer is released, it will knock over the vial of acid and kill the cat. If the hammer is not released, nothing happens and the cat remains alive. Schrödinger's theory was, until you actually look in the box to observe whether the cat is alive or dead, it actually exists in both states. The cat is both alive and dead at the same time. Until someone is there to perceive which state it's in, both a live cat and a dead cat are existing in the same space in the box, like a smeared photograph. I guess I can't say it was misunderstood. The observation was an exact representation of our reality. What was misunderstood, however, was the impact that this has on our lives. It shapes the very experience we have every day. It affects the collective consciousness of our species, our mental and physical health as individual human beings, and it shapes the entire illusion that we're entangled in. It is the foundation of all existence and the creation of all matter within our perception. In 1608, the telescope was invented by a man named Hans Lippershey. He called it a Dutch perceptive glass, which he used for seeing things far away as if they were nearby. An interesting choice of words to name your fancy new tool. In today's world, how different would we understand the vastness of space if Hahn used his invention to instead make the tiny dots bigger? The telescope, being exactly the same in every way, the only difference is the idea motivating this interaction with what's being perceived. Would we understand the universe differently with such a small change in wording? Instead of launching rockets to a faraway destination like Mars or our moon, would we have instead a universe where our planet is surrounded by microscopic gods? Tiny dots of consciousness viewable in greater detail if you make them larger. It may seem like a strange idea, but I promise you the probability of that universe is just as likely as the probability of the one we currently inhabit. Our perception is the creator of all that is. One day, a man had an idea that the stars were faraway balls of burning gas surrounded by planets. He created a tool that he believed with all of his consciousness would perform a certain task. When he used this tool to observe what he wanted to observe, his observations became a reality for him, and for him alone. When he told another person of his idea while presenting the information as he came to find it, the second person is now included in this new version of reality. The cycle continues into infinity, expanding outward in all directions, causing a simultaneous ripple in every dimension of existence. Once the idea is accepted by a critical mass or a percentage of the species, it becomes a reality in which all parts of the species now inhabit. This phenomena is known to us already, but again, vastly misunderstood by our species as a whole. We lovingly refer to it as the 100th monkey effect. The 100th monkey states that once a certain proportion of a species learns a new skill or idea, the entire species suddenly has this new skill or knows the idea. What I'm suggesting is, the only reason we perceive the universe in the way we do as a species, being surrounded by incredibly distant stars and galaxies, is because Hans Lippershey used the invention he created to see things far away as if they were nearby, instead of making the tiny dots bigger. The collective consciousness of our species made a decision as to what surrounds us, and that decision forms the way we interact with those tiny dots. The act of looking outward and expecting to find something far away was the very act that created the matter we perceive. The simple fact that we keep looking for things smaller and smaller with a Large Hadron Collider means that we will always find a smaller piece of the whole. It will be there every time without fail. When we look further and further into space, whatever we expect to find will also be there. Once a decision has been made by our scientists to define the smallest length, is when you will finally have the smallest length. The entire universe is built on information. The thoughts you have and believe to generate in your own head are more oftentimes received from your environment like a radio antenna. Every thought you have is an entity of light, a packet of information transmitted into the atmosphere, causing a ripple through all of existence, affecting things and worlds in every dimension. The idea of quantum entanglement is so pervasive in our structure, there is no language that can accurately describe it. I had to give you the preceding information because without it, it's difficult to understand the idea of accessing the Akashic records of our species. You can think of the Akash as a library of all experience in the universe. Every idea you have, will have, or have had in the past is stored here. Picture yourself walking into a library. As far as you can see in every direction are books, filled with the life experiences of every consciousness across the vastness of our universe. This library exists on a very real level. Each record in the library can be accessed at different frequencies of consciousness. By practicing meditation on a regular basis, you will learn how to access the Akash. There will be no reason at all to keep searching externally for any information you desire. The information already exists. You simply need to tune in to the proper channel to receive it. Chapter 6. The Perception of My Consciousness. After all the research on both the physical and the ethereal realms, I came to several conclusions that I would like to share with you. Conclusions so obvious, they cannot be ignored any longer. You have the choice to either accept the information or reject it. If you choose to ignore the insights provided here, all the reasons you chose to experience this life will go unknown to you until you decide otherwise. Everything in your experience was put there by you, long before you were born. You will continue to guide yourself in the direction you choose, unless you choose to expand your consciousness from what it currently is. In doing so, your expanded consciousness will affect your past and future lives. All are part of the same whole, and all experience is affected by expanded consciousness. It took a lot of decoding to realize the effects of perception and how powerful our thoughts truly are. There was a point where I was terrified I might succumb to the confusion, a point where I was certain I was going to end up like others I've known, misunderstood, drugged, and locked in my own mind for the rest of my life. My reality has been guided by one idea or another that I picked up along the way from friends, parents, and family members. It turns out, we human beings are definitely affected by our environment and our environment expands far further than we previously thought. My life has been filled with blaming others for my circumstances, when I was the one who created the whole damn thing. Every time I attacked someone, it was only because I seen in them what I hated about myself. I was surrounded by the signs my entire life, which, due to where my attention was focused and my belief in how the world operates, went by me completely unnoticed. It was only after going out of my mind I was able to surpass my own perception. As stated in the title of a video by Jason Silva entitled, "We Need to Be Lost to Find Ourselves," truer words have never been spoken. About mental illness. Please, stop treating family members that have been diagnosed with mental illness as if they're crazy. They are simply perceiving something you're not. They don't understand what it is, and they do not possess the mental faculties to adequately describe the experience in a way that is understandable to the people who have never experienced it. Based on this fact, they are further drugged in a state of catatonia which disables and destroys part of their brains. As this happens, the confusion is escalated until they find themselves surrounded by what appears to be an external part of their existence. The contradiction in the realities presented to their consciousness at any point in time from the perception of everyone around them, compared to what they are experiencing, causing a further separation of self. For a person with a weaker consciousness, this process will cause massive amounts of physical damage to the brain until a point is reached where their consciousness can no longer continue on this plane of existence. What I'm saying is, when someone starts to get a little tweaky, the worst thing you can do is destroy their brains with prescription poisons that are designed to disable, not rebuild. Once the process begins, it will not stop and will only continue to progress further into a state of dementia. If you have any desire to help a family member suffering from mental illness, you must stop using prescription medication to fix the problem and help the patient understand their reality is the way they perceive it. Doing this is the only way to remove mental illness from our experience. People who are hearing voices in their head which no one else can hear are still hearing voices. When you tell them these voices are actually their own thoughts simply being heard in a different voice, you're further plunging them into a state of disorientation when in fact your perception, or the lack thereof, is also distorted and disoriented from the true nature of reality. You believe so blindly in the non-existence of something, you cannot see the literal writing on the wall around you. Our approach to mental health is the same as our approach to gangrene. You must cut off the defective appendage. Unfortunately for the unlucky person who unintentionally aligned his consciousness to an energy they don't understand, the opportunity to heal is never given. Mental illness, along with every other affliction known to our planet, is a product of our own imagination. Every tumor, every cancer, every miraculous healing, and every instant death. These are all instances where the consciousness of an individual has been so disoriented by the separation of self from all that is, it causes the body to continually provide opportunities to examine where your beliefs lie, by applying the contrast in your experience. The further an individual identifies itself as its body, and its body as itself, the rate of expansion increases, exponentially increasing the rate of declination of the physical apparatus, which, said in a more simple format, the more you separate yourself from the actual reality we exist in, the worse your situation will become. You either choose a path, or the path will choose you based on what you believe. You are allowed to change what you believe at any time, which will in turn change the reality in which you dwell. In order to help align a person's energy who may be suffering from a mental illness or hallucinations, here are a few things you can do which will allow a natural healing of the mind and allow someone with a particular vibration to vibrate to a new song, so to speak. During a lecture by Esther Hicks, also known as Abraham Hicks, she used some very clear instructions for guidance into alignment during meditation. After describing to a man, the voices he hears, whispering words in your ear, are not voices at all. They are the vibrational downloads the person is continuously interpreting into those one-liners. You suck, you're stupid, everyone hates you, are all different downloads being received and interpreted by the subconscious mind. The voices are an example of someone creating a personality to match the vibration they've tapped into. The relationship can be any relationship you want it to be, and it doesn't have to be a negative experience unless you choose it to be. After I heard that, I began to assign some of the thoughts I had with a different voice. I chose an English accent for any thoughts that seemed dignified and full of long words. Within 2 hours, I was hearing someone else's voice in my head telling me to do things. It was a man with an English accent, suggesting I do things with statements like, "You know, my good man, your wife would be incredibly pleased when she got home from work if the laundry was done." Holy shit, I thought. I just created an alternate personality in my head in one instant. It took me 2 hours to realize what had happened. Imagine what it would be like for you if that had happened by accident and no one noticed, not even you. How far would you follow that voice? What if it was always right? It never made mistakes and was always predicting future events? How long would this go on in your head before you realized what it was telling you? What if you decided it was going to be there when you get stressed out, so you always look for it, and you find it? This is what's happening in the mind of a human being with many different afflictions of what we lump into the definition of mental illness. If you are able to catch it early enough, no one would suffer the unending trauma that we keep punishing them with. Please show this information to your psychiatrist and every other person you meet in the mental health industry. This is the perspective they need to hear immediately, otherwise there will be no end to the tragedy they've been causing. During a state of meditation, the ideas surrounding these voices need to be seen from a different perspective in order to be understood for their true purpose. Once you understand the vibration, you can simply ask it to go away, thus breaking the alignment with the frequency. Use ideas like, "I want it to feel good. I don't want it to be contrived. I want to be inspired. And I want it always to be a positive and helpful experience." Tuning into and focusing on these thoughts will change the frequency, and when you are able to change the channel, it's no different than when you do it on your TV. You can even turn it off if you desire. You have to be willing to undertake such a battle. You have to be willing to stop fighting. You have to be willing to understand that you made a decision to have this experience before you were born into your current body. You agree to every experience you have when you align your frequency to it. This is only going to continue for as long as you desire it to continue. About religion. Have you ever wondered why there is such a persistent aching for our species to achieve some sort of ascended state? Why do we feel the need to justify our existence with some sort of story or meaning? Why have so many people over the last several thousand years received what they believe to be messages from God? Repeated mystical experiences that we're told is merely hallucination. Tricks of the mind in order to perceive what we desire to see. Why is it that in every religion, the same story seems to be told? Stories of the resurrection of a Savior to come save us all, to punish all evil and carry the righteous to a magical kingdom filled with the infinite love of peaceful abundance? We hear variations of these stories from all over the world, each told through the eyes of the belief structures at the time. So many, in fact, the only logical objective conclusion a person can come to is to realize they all must be false. Fairy tales we told ourselves as a species in order to somehow calm the fear of death we all have buried so deep inside. What these stories were designed to be was a way to describe a reality that the human consciousness has no reference for. So stories have been transmitted through the dimensions, and based on the consciousness of the receiver, the words are designed around the reality the receiver currently inhabits, which is why we end up with different stories told from different perspectives. You cannot relay a message if you don't possess the ability to decipher it in its undistorted form. So the message fits with what we know as a species and delivered as such. Unfortunately, between the filters of human perception and the overwhelming need to claim ownership for a certain ideology, these messages are often distorted shortly after they are received by the propagation of lies, fear, and doubt fed to the masses. I encapsulated the vastness of choice of world religions into my focus for some multi-dimensional reinterpretation, and here's what I found. The majority of the stories are true to a certain extent, but have been twisted when presented in religious texts to guide you to place your power in the hands of someone else, someone with more wisdom and more power. Every story told is put in the context of good and evil, right and wrong, darkness and light, God and the devil, stories of an all-powerful God that will punish the wicked and protect the virtuous. All of these stories are designed to persuade you to act in a certain way, in accordance with how the rule makers think you should be living your life, behaving as they think you should behave. Then we use these newfound rules to build belief structures because if everyone believes the same thing, predicting and controlling the behavior becomes inevitable. Following that line of thinking, if you can control people's behavior without them being aware of it, you end up the consciousness of an entire earth being enslaved without having any awareness of it. They became the proverbial worker ants running around gathering resources in order to serve the purpose of the one queen. Consider, if you will, everything I have presented to you in this book so far. Everything I am saying is telling you that you contain the power of God within you. You have the ability to search within your own consciousness to access all of the information you could ever imagine, or that has ever been imagined. If you are able to see past the illusion of separation, you can access the entire universe whenever you desire. However, if you search externally for the knowledge you seek through our ideas of how to properly analyze information as a scientist, what you will find is the vastness of space and the deep darkness, and the fear of death trapped within it. In an effort to clear up some probable misconceptions, I'm going to take a minute to make a few statements to clarify what could be some confusing ideas. I am not saying I am the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. I am not saying that Jesus Christ is a man at all. I'm saying the words you've heard spoken of the man named Jesus were not referring to a man at all. The Christ consciousness is simply a level of awareness of all that is. It is reaching a frequency of thought that will enable you to see past the illusion of separation to see the connectedness of all that is. Here's the idea. 1. God and evil are an illusion caused by a distorted perception of contrast. 2. Now is all there is. 3. This is the universe of infinite expansion. 4. This is the universe of contrast. 5. You are the universe experiencing itself. 6. Everything in your experience is a creation of your own consciousness. 7. You experience contrast as a product of the universe's infinite expansion of itself. 8. You experience contrast in order to continually evolve. 9. The experience of contrast gives you the opportunity to make a choice about the experiences you prefer. 10. You will perceive what you believe, and you will believe what you think. Earlier I mentioned how, if the use of telescope had been perceived differently, our relationship with the stars would be completely different. Our relationship with ourselves would be completely different. Our relationships with religion and science are the direct cause of the separation of our species. I'll state that again so you don't misunderstand. Our belief in scientific truths being the only truth of the universe, in conjunction with our belief in the many religions who point their followers to a God outside themselves, are in direct contradiction with all that is. I'll state that again so you don't misunderstand. The Christ consciousness is a level of awareness of all that is. It is the literal perception of the connectedness of everything perceivable. I'll state that again so you don't misunderstand. If one entity, being, energy, or consciousness is in contradiction with another entity, being, energy, or consciousness, you would refer to this as an anti-entity, anti-being, anti-energy, or anti-consciousness. The religions of science, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and every derivation of them all lead you to believe in the separation of self from other selves. They teach you to search externally if you wish to find God. In other words, you can say they are all in direct contradiction of all that is. I'll let you come to the final conclusion all by yourself. It's really quite incredible when you think about it, but what they say is true. The greatest trick of the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. About life. It's incredibly easy to get caught up in the confusion of our everyday perceptions. When someone you love dies, the grief can be so unbearable you don't know how you're going to survive without them in your life. Often we've heard people speak of a loved one's last words being those of regret or sadness, wishing they would have spent more time with family and less time working. Thoughts of regret as they think back on their experiences on Earth, knowing they missed out on so much while focusing on acquiring the material possessions they imagined would make them happy. You have the right to enjoy every experience you have without having to suffer to get it. If you focus all your attention on being happy and loving the people around you, your life will be led by your consciousness through a series of serendipitous events that will lead you to the realization of everything you came here to experience. So focus on being happy, loving, and positive, and everything will work out. Spend time with your loved ones, and don't let anyone else's negative energy change the way you vibrate. These are the keys to living a long, happy life. I'll state that again so you don't misunderstand. The only requirement for living a long, happy life is that you be happy and alive. About death. There is no need to fear death. You exist now and you always have, the same way you existed before you came into your body, and your existence will remain long after you leave it. The fear of death can be a very painful and terrifying experience, but this is only due to the perceived separation of self from all that is. Fear is easily overcome with a practice of meditation and a search for an understanding of the events of your life. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to know it for yourself. Meditation is like the movie The Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. If you seek to understand the meaning of your life through the practice of meditation, you will understand it. After your consciousness leaves your body, you will be offered a chance of reflection of your life's experience. After you understand what you needed to understand, you will have the choice of what you would like to experience next. If you wish to stay on Earth and reincarnate into another body, you can do so. If you would rather experience what it's like to be a rock on Venus for a few thousand years, you can do that too. Sounds weird, but this is our universe. You are the creator of your own experience, so you may want to examine your beliefs before you find yourself in a place you weren't aware you had created. It can get rather disorienting and extend the duration of your evolutionary expansion. About consumerism. Consumerism, the current evolution of the system we use to call capitalism, is no different than any other religion. Consumerism is a belief that you hold, an idea that you will find happiness by acquiring more and consuming more. My thoughts on this are quite simple. For me, it's qualified with the same contradiction all that is, as is any other religion. That doesn't mean you should throw away all your electronics, hand tools, or gadgets. It simply means to focus your life acquiring things that will make you happy will only keep you reaching for more things. Buy or acquire the things you desire, but don't let your happiness be conditional to your possessing or receiving them. Final thoughts. The information contained in this book is being presented to you to free your mind from the enslavement of your consciousness. If you understand that you alone are the creator of your own experience, you will have the tools to understand and enjoy every experience of your life. You don't have to give up pleasure or experience pain in order to have everything you have ever wanted. You don't have to punish yourself and work so hard to acquire the things you want. You simply have to release the fear of not having them. For thousands of years, we have been victims of lies, deceit, and manipulation. An imaginary world pulled over the consciousness of our species like a wet blanket covering the perception of our reality. The story we've been told about our species, who and what we are all false. And the best part about it is that you don't have to believe anything I say. You don't have to trust me. By reading the information in this book, you have all the required tools. You can prove it to yourself. If a few minutes a day is more important than experiencing for yourself the true meaning of your own existence, there's nothing else I can do to get your attention. This information will be received by those who possess the level of consciousness able to receive it, by those who are open and ready for the truth, by those who are ready for a new story. The stories we use to govern our lives are from another world and another time, a world of another reality. The level of awareness of our species will no longer be contained by our fear of the unknown. The time has come for a new story. It is time we stop ignoring our own power while we let others run our planet and our reality into a state of chaos. It's time we stop standing by silently while our species is wiped off the planet for the 5th time. It's time we fulfill the cosmic story that has been the focus of our search for so long, the story of our consciousness, the story of our species. It's time we see the reality we inhabit for what it is. It's time we take action against the destruction of us. Time to take back control of our own evolution. I present you with this information in this format because this is how the information was supposed to be presented so many millennia ago. I had to use the words in the context of my life for people to understand them. The process of my awakening began several years ago, but my own personal expansion came on like a freight train a few days after I began to seek answers. I'm telling this story as I find the information so you can compare your life to it. What you will find is that we all have the same story, the same variables. Your story may have a different plot and different characters, but it's no different than mine. It was only after I became aware of my effect on the lives of the people around me, only when I was able to get a glimpse that perhaps I was the one misunderstanding something, that I was finally able to understand the power of my emotions. Emotions are the key to everything. They are the universe showing you what you prefer. If you ignore them, you're ignoring your power. If you let someone or something else dictate your emotional state, you are giving away your power. If you never afford the time to your consciousness it needs to awaken, it will never gain proper bearing in the reality it now inhibits. You'll go through life and never remember why you showed up on Earth in the first place. I was finally able to understand what was happening in my life reality, and finally able to understand the events of my life in a way I never could before. I understand the agreements I made before my birth. I also understand the role my family members and friends played in this drama. I was able to stop blaming everyone else for the events of my life because I finally understood the purpose of the game we're all playing. My apostles. I would like to say thank you to a few people whose voices and actions played a major part in the development of my consciousness, and I encourage you to check out their work. Joe Rogan. Joe opened me up to my emotions. With his comfortability in his manhood and all that he is, I was able to stop thinking I had to be a tough guy all the time. Thanks, Joe. Jason Silva. Playlists of Jason's incredible interpretations of perception and jaw-dropping videos from the series Shot of Awe are on a constant loop in my garage. Incredibly inspiring stuff. Thanks, Jason. Duncan Trussell. Duncan Trussell was the man who introduced me to the idea of spirituality. His podcast, The Duncan Trussell Family Hour, is a must-see. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil was the initial spark of my curiosity and my first taste of real knowledge of the universe. Thanks again, Neil. Lawrence Cross. Lawrence's explanation of the work of the universe in the book Greatest Stories Ever Told So Far opened my eyes to several concepts I needed to understand. Thanks, Lawrence. Brian Greene. Brian's explanation of the function of time and his diagrams of the expansion of the universe helped me understand the nature of thoughts as related to planes of existence. Thanks, Brian. Aubrey Marcus. Between the supplements his company makes and the AMP podcast filled with insights into plant medicine, I can't get enough of Aubrey's universe. It's one you should definitely inhabit. Thanks, Aubrey. Russell Brand. By far, the most entertaining form of enlightenment I have ever experienced. He has several podcasts devoted to different aspects of reality. Russell's description of addiction made me realize how deep our addictions become. You were my introduction to meditation when I heard you say you were drug-free. Thanks, Russell. Stephen Greer. Stephen Greer taught me that it's okay to pursue what you believe is real, even when everyone around you says you're lying. Thanks, Stephen. Esther Hicks. Your continual and various descriptions of the law of attraction were the key for my understandings of reality. Thank you for all the effort you've put in over all these years. These were my spiritual teachers. These are the perceptions of reality that influence the way I perceive myself. I appreciate all of you sharing your light with me, and I hope I have done some of the same for you. To everyone I grew up with, got in a fight with, yelled at, bullied, and every other time I acted like an ass, I would like to thank you for your part as well. When my world caved in, I realized all the shittiness I spread in my wake. It was the image of you that showed me what I had been. Sorry I was a dick. I was still sleeping. As I write this last paragraph, I feel an immense weight being lifted from my consciousness. As of this moment, I have been unable to find a way to talk to my wife about any of this. When she reads the information contained in this book for the first time, I'm sure it will answer some questions she had building up over the last few years about the overall weirdness of my behavior. She has been putting up with a husband who seemed to get weirder by the day, all the while staying as supportive as she can possibly maintain. The projection of what appeared to be her future seemed to be headed in a familiar pattern, supporting another non-functional husband. She is the only reason it was possible for me to go into this incredible journey and the reason I am who I am today. To my wife, Ariella, we were drawn to each other like magnets for a reason. I am grateful for your patience and support when we all seem to be heading south. I have loved you since time began, and that will never change. Thank you for being you and freeing my mind.